welcome back to my channel. A long time no see. That's my fault. You know, life just happened in the month of November and late October, and I truly did not have time to read, let alone like film, because what would I talk about if I hadn't been reading? You know what I'm saying? So I'm back, and I don't know, I just wanted to like casually sit down on the floor and talk about the 4 books that I read in the month of November, kind of like a November wrap up, you know, old school type of video. And I have, only 4 books, so don't get too excited. I don't know how long this video is going to be, if I'm going to talk about each book for like 2 minutes or like 10. So we're just gonna get started. So I guess we'll start with the first book that I read in November, and that was Things in Jars by Just Kid. So this actually took me like 3 or 4 weeks to get through. I started this right after my last reading vlog, which was like mid-October, right? I don't know. I can't exactly remember. But yeah, and then I finished this like November 13th. So really insane it took me that long to read this book. I'm gonna briefly talk about it. So this follows our main character, Bridgie. I never learned how to say her name. Bridgie Devine, right? She is this female detective. It's London, 1860s, and she gets on the case of a little girl named Christabel who goes missing, right? So her dad like calls for Bridgie to find his missing daughter. Now, this man is very rich. He lives in a manor, and he's really sketchy. You just feel off about him. And, you know, it's known that Christabel kind of had these like magical powers, and something was a little bit off about her. And it turns out like no one at this mansion like ever saw her. She was kind of stowed away in this like part of the mansion that no one knew about. So really sketchy. He's also a doctor, and he's been known to just like keep random things in jars, hence, you know, the name. And so we are following Bridgie on this like wild goose chase to try and find Christabel, because, you know, we're thinking maybe she was sold to the circus because something's weird about her, and you're just not sure. She's followed with some, you know, fun characters helping her along the way. There's this ghost with a lot of tattoos. He was like a boxer. I think his name was Rudy or Ruby, so he's helping her out, and just some other people along the way. And so that's like the main kind of storyline we're following, but we also get flashbacks back to Bridgie's childhood and kind of seeing how she got to where she is. And it's really interesting. So because this took me like 3 or 4 weeks to read, I did kind of feel a little bit disjointed from this book, kind of not fully invested. There were times where I just like couldn't remember what was happening when I picked it up. I was like, but you know, I'm too proud to start over from the beginning, so I just kind of pushed through and was confused most of the time. But I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the concept. It gave me all the spooky vibes. You know, I wanted to read it around Halloween time, and so loved that. Loved London in the 1860s. It was just like foggy and dark and rainy all the time, and loved the atmosphere. But yeah, I wish I like stuck with it for like 2 or 3 days, because maybe I would have loved it even more. Gave it 5 stars. I don't know, maybe I'll have to reread it in the future, but it was really cool. I went way out of my comfort zone with this book. You know, magical's not really my thing, but it was so good. Highly recommend. Things in Jars by Just Kid. The second book that I picked up in November was Doomsday. Sorry, Let's Call It a Doomsday by Katie Henry. So this is kind of a mental health read. I'm in a kick of those books lately. In 2020, I read a lot of them, and I thought I'd just keep it going. So I watched a booktuber's like bookshelf tour, and she had this like mental health section, and she said she loved this, so I picked it up. So we follow Ellis, who is in high school, and she has a mental illness of just thinking the world is going to end. She is terrified. She is just constantly thinking about the worst thing that could happen. And she's like, I'm not, you know, a doomsday prepper, but she definitely like has storages of like food and stuff. And she tries to warn like her family all the time, and her family's kind of over it, especially her mom. They're like this Mormon family, which is actually a huge part of the book that I didn't know was gonna be a huge part of the book, but her family is. LDS, and so that's like brought up a lot. But her mom just wants like this normal daughter, and Ellis just can't stop thinking about the end of the world, basically. So she goes to therapy for this, and one day in therapy she meets this girl named Hannah and is just obsessed with her, like just feels this like attraction to her. Turns out they go to the same school, and so they start to become friends, and Hannah is like, hey, like I know how the world is gonna end. She like says she has these dreams, and so they try and like crack the code of her dreams and try and figure out like when and where and how the world is gonna end. So again, we're on another goose chase trying to figure this out. There's kind of like, you know, time is running out kind of feeling throughout the whole book. Overall, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad. There was nothing like horrible about it, but just compared to like the other mental health reads I've read this year, it just didn't really stack up for me. I just felt like something was missing, and like Hannah is not a great character or like friend to Ellis at all, and like I don't know, Ellis's like family kind of sucks, and just it sounds kind of funny saying it's like not a happy book because like it's not supposed to be, but it's not a happy book, and it's just, I don't know, I wasn't super in love with it. I did really like, you know, how this showed a different kind of mental health issue. Something that Ellis does is catastrophizes, which I can't believe that's a word. It doesn't sound like a real word, but that's what she does. And you know, the few times I went to therapy, we figured out that's what I do too. So I related to her in that way, just like thinking the worst is gonna happen at every moment. So that was cool, but yeah, I wasn't in love with it. So that's Let's Call to Doomsday. On to the third book that I read in November was The Starcrossed Sisters of Tuscany by Lori Nelson Spielman. Y'all, I gave this book 5 out of 5. So we start with like hundreds of years ago, right? There's this woman in Italy, and she makes this curse happen upon her family where the second born sister that never finds love, never gets married. It's this whole family curse, right? Fast forward to like modern day now. We follow our main character, I literally always forget her name, Amelia. She is a second born sister, of course, and she's about 30, and she's working at the family bakery, you know, this huge Italian family. I think they're in New York or New Jersey or something, and she's kind of accepted that this is her life and that she's never gonna find love. Like half the family believes in the curse and half of them don't, and I think she's just kind of accepted that like this is her fate, that she's never gonna find love. So she's given up, and she's just happy, you know, with her cat in her apartment, and that's kind of her life. So I'm gonna go through some family members because this is all about family, obviously. So then we have her Nana, her grandma, who is kind of strict on the family. You know, she's definitely like head of the household, right? And then we have Amelia's cousin Lucy, who is about 21, again a second born sister who is really desperate to find love, kind of the opposite of Amelia in every way. She hasn't given up hope yet, basically. And then we have Nana's sister Poppy, who is the second born sister. So she is Amelia's great aunt Poppy. I know that's a little confusing, there's a lot of names, but I promise it's not that confusing. So Aunt Poppy, great Aunt Poppy, is kind of just like secluded from the family, like cut off, and you never really learn why until the end. Nana is like really strict about like no one talking to her, like cutting all ties with her. So one day, great Aunt Poppy like FaceTimes Amelia. She's like, oh God. So she picks up this FaceTime, and great Aunt Poppy is like, hey, come with me to Italy. Let's go on like a 10-day tour, and I'm gonna break this curse, and we're gonna find love. So of course, Amelia's a little skeptical, but she decides to talk to her Nana about it, which is not a good idea because Nana is furious that she would even think about doing this, and just feels like it's going against the whole family and everything, and just going against all of her wishes. But she decides to go, and then finds out that Lucy is coming along as well. So we have these 3 second-born sisters trying to break this curse in Italy. And I just want to leave it there because so many fun things happen in Italy, so many sad things happen in Italy. I want to go to Italy so bad, and so reading this book just transported me there, y'all. Just like the family in it, the romance in it, the adventure, It's just so beautiful. I love the character development. There's just so many good aspects to this book. Like, I thought it'd be really light and fluffy, and like there are parts of it that are, but like it is such a good story. It just like reels you in and you cannot stop reading it. But 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, totally recommend this if that sounds interesting to you. All about family and love and Italy, y'all. Italy, chef's kiss, beautiful, loved it. And then the last book that I read in the month of November was The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. Arpan. Huge trigger warning for suicide in this book and depression, so if that's something you can't handle, do not pick this up. I'm gonna try and like leave most of that out of this review because I don't want to like trigger anyone. But main point of this book is suicide and depression. So we follow Lee, who is half Taiwanese, half American, white. So her mom is Taiwanese. And we open up with her mom committing suicide in her house, right? And she's an only child. She lives with her mom and her dad. So her and her dad are trying to like pick up the pieces and figure out like why she did this. And they're trying to find like a suicide note, and they find like little scraps of paper in the garbage. And it's like, I want you to remember, and then it's like crossed out. So there's still kind of this mystery there. And one night Lee is in bed or whatever, and this big bird with red feathers comes to her window and drops off this package and is like, come find me, like come to Taiwan. She believes that this bird is her mom, and she's taking her to Taiwan and keeps seeing this bird. And her father traveled to Taiwan. All of Lee's life, like she never met her mom's side of the family. Like it was always just off limits, something about them. They were just never, she was never gonna meet those grandparents basically. And so now that her mom's passed away, she knows she has to go there and like meet her grandparents and learn about her mother's life before coming to America and getting married and having her and everything. And so that's a huge part of the book. Again, this one kind of has those two storylines. So we're following her in Taiwan, trying to pick up the pieces. Her father ends up leaving her in Taiwan. She can't speak the language. Her grandparents can't speak English. It's, you know, a lot of fun. And then we also follow about a year and a half before her mother commits suicide. We see the months leading up to it. And her mother is so depressed. It's a really good portrayal. I think it's like one of the best I've ever read. It's just so dark and so sad, and oh, your heart breaks for her mom so much, and you can see her like going in and out of those depressive moods. But Lee is really artistic, and of course her father hates it and wants her to like think about a real career, and her mother plays the piano, and so she kind of gets it, but she just doesn't have much of her mother left. It's just bits and pieces every now and then. And so she feels really alone, and she has her best friend Axel, who I love. I love how they interact. I love everything about them together, Lee and Axel. So yeah, you kind of follow her like normal teenage life, like trying to survive high school, and then you get to like her mother committing suicide, and it's so beautiful. I highly recommend it. Again, if you think that you can get through it, it is a tough read, but it's so beautiful. I cried. It's just the writing, the pictures in your mind. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was so beautiful. I really recommend. I am really happy with these reads. For the most part, like they've all been really good in November, so I hope you guys enjoyed, you know, me talking about some books for a little bit, and I promise I won't be gone for much longer anymore. I'm hoping to like pick up reading again. I just needed a little bit of a break, but I think I'm back, so there you go. Already read a few books, so I have more things to talk about. I won't leave for, you know, 6 weeks or whatever, so anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys are having a good holiday season, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!